In 1985, we got a Stephen King adaptation in the form of Silver Bullet, based on one of his novellas, Cycle of the Werewolf, which was published in 1983. Just recently released on Blu-ray. Let's take a look.
Silver Bullet, the last glimmering hope.
1985 was a really good year for movies. For me, it was kind of like a seminal time because Back to the Future was released in 1985, and it was a movie that kind of changed my life. Every movie that came out from 1985 on, I compared to Back to the Future because it was such a wonderful movie. So for me, 1985 was a really important year for movies. And when Stephen King's Silver Bullet came out, this movie is one of the better adaptations of a Stephen King book. Much like It, which was just recently released, this movie does the storytelling a lot of justice. I haven't read the book in a long time. Definitely want to get back and revisit it. I remember from a young age watching this movie that I just love it. It's a fantastic werewolf tale and had a lot of fun with it again today. So Stephen King wrote the screenplay, which is good. Having the author of the novella, his hand in the making of the movie is a plus. And it was directed by Daniel Attias. This was his one and only feature film. He stuck to TV stuff pretty much after this one. And it stars Gary Busey, the guy from Point Break, and Lethal Weapon. The late great Corey Haim. Before he was fighting vampires, he was fighting werewolves. A lot of comparisons between this and The Lost Boys. You know, young guy having a monster come to get him because he knows the identity. Big fan of the two Coreys back in the day, Corey Haim and Corey Feldman. They're from my generation. I was the same age as these guys, so I kind of grew up watching their movies and seeing a couple of young guys have the success that they had in the movie world was really cool. I really took a shine to both the actors in the early days where they teamed up together in The Lost Boys, and then the subsequent movies they did after that, like License to Drive and Dream a Little Dream. I've always been a big fan of them. I like Corey Feldman when he first appeared to me in Friday the 13th Part 4, The Final Chapter. And I think I saw Corey Haim for the first time in Lucas, which is also a really good film. Yeah, here he is in Silver Bullet. He passed away in 2010, so I can't believe it's been nearly 10 years since he's left us, and it's a real shame because they did have a lot of troubles in their lives growing older, a lot of drug abuse. And yeah, real shame to hear that fame at such an early age can often corrupt the young minds. It was really sad to hear of his passing. It also stars Megan Follows from Anne of Green Gables, Everett McGill from Twin Peaks, and Terry O'Quinn as the sheriff, most famous from Lost. Okay, so I'm going to go over the plot now. I might be going into mild spoiler territory here. So if you haven't seen the film, stop this and go watch that because straight away I'm going to recommend it. It was a lot of fun. So the movie's set in Tarker's Mill.
It began in May.
And we focus on young Corey Haim playing Marty and his sister Jane, played by Megan Follows. Marty is paralyzed, so he's in a wheelchair, which he has nicknamed Silver Bullet. And him and his friend Brady play some nasty tricks on poor Jane, and it's not nice. But Marty's got a conscience, so as soon as he gets the opportunity to apologize to his sister, he does. He lives in a nice family. His Uncle Red, played by Gary Busey, comes to visit. Bit of an alcoholic. Mum not too keen on him coming to visit their impressionable son. We have a lot of stalker vision from the werewolf point of view.
It happened again.
You know, first person, like you kind of see from his angle, and he's sneaking around killing people. One of the first kills is a pregnant lady. Jane witnesses a fight between a couple at the park before she has her nasty run-in with her brother and his silly mate. She sees a couple having a fight. Apparently the husband's leaving the wife. We cut to that wife later on in the movie, and she's popping pills trying to kill herself, where she gives a little bit of a monologue saying, you know, she's going to kill herself even though she's pregnant. So that kind of did give me pause. I'm like, really? You're popping pills because a guy left you and you're pregnant? Come on. Not long after that, we get a pretty impressive showdown with the werewolf. He turns up. Pretty much straight away, we got full view of this thing. Nice big werewolf suit, which took about 3 months to make apparently, and it's covered in bear hair. So yeah, we get wolf action straight away. Pretty good kill. A lot of practical effects in this once again. So that was really good to see. And it was rated R here in Australia. So, well, back in 1985. So we do get a fair bit of blood and gore in this one, which is really cool. So anyway, we get scenes of Marty cruising around town in his little motorized wheelchair. Plot point is it can run out of gas, so he has to pull into the service station and get filled up pretty frequently. Uncle Red turns up, played wonderfully by Gary Busey. I don't know if he was really drunk on set. We all know Busey does have a love-hate relationship with liquor, or more of a love relationship. So I know he does have a bit of a reputation of being drunk on set. Not saying he was on this, but he just played the role really well. We have a few dramatic scenes with him and his sister because they're playing poker with Marty and he's swearing and cussing and, gambling and drinking in front of him, and his sister, Marty's mum, is not too happy with the situation, and there's tension, and we have a bit of a nice little fight scene between Busey and his sister, and young Marty just adores his uncle. He can't see anything wrong with all the drinking and the cussing. I suppose that kind of influenced his later life decisions. Then we have scenes of Marty cruising around town in his little silver bullet with his friends. Walks one of his little girlfriends home to her house, and they got the abusive father, get in the house now. And she tells Marty that she heard funny noises in the greenhouse, and, he would go and investigate, but he'd probably get his wheelchair stuck in the mud. Turns out we have a werewolf loitering in the greenhouse, and he makes an appearance later on and kills the dad. In a nice gory fashion. So by now the township of Tarker's Mill is getting a little bit nervous. The sheriff, played by Terry O'Quinn, is trying to investigate these murders and not getting anywhere. And we have a local townsman, Andy, played by Bill Smitovich, who is kind of riling up the township. It's not until young Brady, Marty's friend from the beginning of the film, gets horribly murdered when he's out flying a kite. His father absolutely loses the plot. We have a funeral scene. Not long after the scene, the father's having a bit of a mental breakdown. He goes to the pub where all the township are being riled up by Andy to, go to form a posse to go find this killer. The sheriff comes in, tries to calm down the situation, telling everyone to go home. Andy bites back, and then the father of Brady really hugs up and says, you know what, we've got to take the law into our own hands. The sheriff has been telling everybody that they're dangerously close to becoming a lynch mob. He calls it private justice, and that's just one step away from becoming, lynching people. But Brady's father is quite happy to do private justice, and with him having an emotional breakdown and storming out of the pub with the sole intent of tracking down this killer, the entire township follow. And then we have a scene where we've got a bunch of the township men and the ladies with their guns and their baseball bats, the peacemaker, out in the woods trying to track down this killer. And that's when we start hearing the wolf howling. It's foggy and the wolf attacks. Really nice scene. The wolf's hiding under the fog and pulls them down one at a time, throws them around. The guys obviously freak out and take off. The guy who has the baseball bat, the peacemaker, has that turned back on him and is beaten to death by the werewolf.
What was that? It's over there. Don't point that at me.
Nobody knew who or what was responsible.
Come on.
They only knew it had to be stopped.
We have a lot of nice practical effects here. Once again, the kills are cool. Yeah, it's dated and they do look a little bit corny, but it's nice to see an older film with this quality of special effects. I enjoy this kind of film. The 1980s really delivered fun movies. They really did. So then we have another funeral scene. Introduced to the Reverend, played by Everett McGill, who ends up having an hallucination where the whole congregation starts turning into werewolves. So that's like a massive clue as to who the culprit is, right? Because why would he be having a hallucination otherwise? There's questions. So we cut to Gary Busey back with Marty. They're having a family barbecue, and Uncle Red has made Marty a brand new wheelchair. And this thing is a cross between a wheelchair and a motorbike, and it's all silver chrome. It's got red font on there saying Silver Bullet. And It's pretty cool, I must admit. It goes really super quick. And also we've had, because there's the town curfew, so there was supposed to be a fair with a fireworks show that night. Marty's completely bummed, so Uncle Red somehow mysteriously has got a bag full of firecrackers which he gives to the kid. Marty sneaks out in the dead of night. Being crippled right, he crawls out from his top floor window down a drain pipe onto his new silver bullet and drives into the woods where he starts having his own fireworks show. Pretty resourceful. And then when he's on a little bridge having this, like lighting up the fireworks, we get the point of view shot from the werewolf once again, watching Marty having a bit of fun. Werewolf attacks. Marty obviously is a pretty resourceful kid. He's Corey Haim, grabs one of the firecrackers, the rocket, and shoots it and gets the werewolf in the eye, escapes. So, the next day he's telling his sister about this attack. And Jane, Megan follows, doesn't necessarily believe him, but we get a voiceover from her in the movie as well, like as an older lady. Frequently, it kind of comes and goes, a little bit odd. She starts going around the township and she's just kind of looking for a person with one eye, a man or a woman with just one eye. And she ends up finding him in the form of Reverend Lowe.
Now, from the master of mystery and suspense.
So we now have our werewolf man. And of course, the irony being that he's a man of God, and he also turns into a beast of the devil. So obviously, Reverend Lowe remembers his time as the wolf. They say in the movie that when the moon is full, the more full it gets, the more wolf he becomes. So when the moon's at its fullest, there'll be no Reverend Lowe in there at all. So we have got attacks from the werewolf, and he does seem to remember some of these attacks as Reverend Lowe. Which, if you're a decent person and you're remembering that you're killing people, wouldn't you do something about it? The guy's obviously psychotic. So now that Jane and Marty now know who the werewolf is, they start sending anonymous letters to the Reverend telling him to kill himself. You know, when they cut letters out of the newspaper and they stick them all together to make a sentence. In today's day and age, when there's so much bullying rampant in the world, telling somebody to go kill yourself, not cool, guys, at all. But the Reverend's getting these multiple letters, and because he knows that Marty is the guy that shot the rocket into his eye and like half blinded him, you got to know who the little letters are coming from. Not smart, kids. So anyway, the Reverend knows who is sending him the letters, obviously. So he ends up chasing Marty down on a deserted street. Marty's in his Silver Bullet motorbike, and the Reverend is in his car and chasing him down the street, trying to ram him off the road. Goes across a bridge. There's a bit of a scene on the bridge where he's trying to knock the wheelchair into the water via his car. He escapes and gets trapped in a bridge. The Reverend gets out of his car, corners Marty with the intent of killing him. When luckily there's a farmer just outside, Marty calls for help. Reverend takes off. The kids get their uncle back in town. I don't know where he lives, but he keeps going away, then coming back to visit for short periods. Anyway, Jane and Marty are telling Uncle Red about how the Reverend had tried to run Marty off the road. Of course, they've been telling him about it's a werewolf, it's a monster. Uncle Red is like, come on. But he does believe that after seeing the evidence on the bike of blue paint from the car that hit it, he does go to the sheriff and say, you should investigate the Reverend. Sheriff, played by the wonderful Terry O'Quinn, fantastic in Lost, goes to investigate the Reverend, looks at the car, sees that there's a bit of a dent in the car from hitting the wheelchair. Reverend Lowe steps out of the shadows with his eye patch on, and can't help it, has got the baseball bat, which Jane found earlier as well to convince her that her brother was telling her the truth. Uses it on the sheriff, knocks him down flat, transforms into the werewolf. Pretty decent transformation effects. Best werewolf transformation effects you're going to see in a movie is in American Werewolf in London and The Howling. But this was fairly decent. And the wolf kills the sheriff, beats him to death with the baseball bat. The wolf doesn't really eat any of his victims in this movie either. He murders them either by chewing them up and ripping them apart or beating them to death with the baseball bat. But he doesn't actually consume any of his victims, which is a bit odd. So anyway, the sheriff's now dead. Jake and Marty both give Uncle Red a necklace that they have wearing each made of silver, and they want Uncle Red to go get that made into a silver bullet. So he goes to the local gunsmith and gets a silver bullet. under the pretense that his young nephew has just discovered the Lone Ranger. Wouldn't that be cool if there was a Lone Ranger movie in like a werewolf setting? That'd be sick. Do you guys remember who the Lone Ranger is? So anyway, Marty is now concerned that the werewolf is going to come and get him. They're concerned that because he hurt the wolf will come and get him fairly soon. The parents are conveniently shipped off to a romantic weekend away under the pretense that Uncle Red won some kind of competition, so he gets rid of them as just Uncle Red and the kids at the house waiting for the wolf to attack. And when he does, it's mayhem. There's a scene in the movie where Gary Busey he's disbelieving. He's thinking he's been completely rorted by the kids, and he's taking the bullet out of the gun, as you do, because that's what they do in these movies. They take the bullet out of the freaking gun. And he's standing in front of the door saying, this is I'm stupid. What am I doing? And the wolf bursts in through the door behind him. Now, there was no rehearsals done for this scene at all, so the genuine fear you see on Gary Busey's face is the real deal, because he had no idea that was going to happen, and it scared the bejesus out of him. Another full credit to Gary Busey. He did a lot of his own stunts in this, jumping off things and crashing into breakable furniture and stuff, but apparently he did hurt himself when he landed into the mirror. Apparently you can see it in the movie. I didn't know to look for it, so I didn't see it, but hits the mirror. Glass shard goes into his arm and he starts bleeding for reals. And yeah, so good on you, Gary. So we have the wolf attack, and it's very cool, and, we end up getting, the bullet goes down a drain, and, Marty's got to reach his hand down the drain, and the werewolf is just throwing Gary Busey all over the room. But end of the day, they get the bullet, shoot the wolf dead. In the other eye, by the way, it's just rocket one eye, bullet in the other eye. Drops dead onto the ground as the wolf and transforms back into Reverend Lowe, and it's a pretty cool effect. You see the hair pulling back into the skin, the nails pulling back in, the face with the bubbles, and the snout pulling back into the face. So yeah, the special effects were decent. I really enjoy this film. And that's the end. We have another little voiceover where the older Jane is saying that she loves her brother. So they say, "I love you" to each other, and then the voiceover says, "I could never say I love you, but I'll say it now. I love you, Marty." It's weird. So the voiceover kind of almost implies that Marty is now dead, and she's telling a story about a dead brother. It was a little bit confusing. I need to read the book again. I don't know how closely the screenplay and the novella are. Stephen King, having adapted it, could be fairly accurate, but I don't really remember the novel that much. So I don't know how accurate the storytelling is in this. But the movie was a lot of fun. The first time I saw this was at my mate's, not long after it came out, like 1986, I think, when I was on the VHS. And I remember loving it right away. It was such a good story. It's filmed really well. And I do just have this love affair with 80s movies, especially, like I said in my opening, from 1985 on, or 1984 maybe, with Ghostbusters. I just love everything out of that decade. Maybe it's because I was like a teenager, and this is where my love of movies developed from, and it's what I grew up on, and it kind of formed my love of cinema. A lot of Spielberg inspiration, and Richard Donner, all those guys just kind of formed my love of movies, and this falls right into that category with actors that I just absolutely adored. Like Gary Busey would go on to Point Break, Lethal Weapon, and those movies are just some of my favourite films. And yeah, just having them all kind of combine and appear in movies all together is really cool. A little bit of trivia. Everett McGill, who played the Reverend, and Gary Busey, who played Uncle Red, will both go on to appear in Under Siege 1 and 2, respectively, and get killed by Steven Seagal. Anyway, yeah, Silver Bullet, fantastic movie. I have a lot of fun with this. I've got a lot of love for it. I've seen it a lot of times. I'm glad it's finally out on Blu-ray. The transfer wasn't too clean. There was a bit of grain and artifacting in my transfer. I don't know if it was just my TV set or if it's the Blu-ray itself. Wasn't crystal clear, but it was watchable. And yeah, I really love this film. I'm going to give Silver Bullet a solid 8 out of 10. It does have its flaws, but it's a good movie. And if you've not seen it, I hope my review hasn't spoiled the plot for you too much. If not, if I have, just watch it anyway because it's awesome. And if you want to revisit it, go ahead. It's so much fun. And I just love my werewolf movies. Favorite werewolf movie of all time would be obviously American Werewolf in London, followed closely by The Howling, and then Silver Bullet. They're just great werewolf movies. That's my 3 picks. So if you're going to have a bit of a marathon, grab those 3 and you'll be happy days. Anyway, guys, thanks for checking into my channel. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a thumbs up, also leave a comment, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks for watching.